Welcome back to Feeling Seen, the podcast about the movies that make us feel seen. Today we have a first on the podcast. My co-host is, among other things, a cartoonist for The New Yorker. Asher Perlman's work is the kind that might be weaving its way through your life in ways you don't even realize. You've likely seen his cartoons floating around online and heard his jokes on Late Night with Stephen Colbert, where he's a writer. I think it's appropriate to call him a humorist, a word you don't hear in media all that often these days. And Asher has a new book coming out called, Well, This Is Me. And we are going to be talking about why and how he feels seen by Charlie, one of two Nicolas Cage characters in the movie Adaptation. Asher Perlman, welcome to the show. Is there anything else that people should know about you before we get started?
I think that's everything they should. That's more than they need to know about me. I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you. I like that I'm weaving a thread through people's lives that they're unaware of. It sounds so threatening.
Much like the Bene Gesserit. You are out here, right? Because I feel like that's like New Yorker cartoons is kind of like it's like Shakespeare. It's like, is it one guy or is it 50 people, 100 people we will never hear about? Like they just because they all adhere to like this sensibility, this style, but obviously it's not just one person doing it, but it enters this sort of uniform archive of the New Yorker cartoons. But like, so again, Shakespeare. You're Shakespeare. There it is. Shakespeare cartoonist.
I've often said that I'm Shakespeare. Yes, we are a chorus of voices that form that come together to form one beautiful angelic song. that is New Yorker cartoons.
Tell me about This Is Me.
Oh my gosh! Well, it's a cartoon compilation. I grew up. I'm a '90s kid, so I grew up reading cartoon compilations of The Far Side and Calvin and Hobbes and Foxtrot and all those classics. And I started cartooning a few years back, and I always sort of had the goal in the back of my head of having a compilation of my own, sort of in the vein of the ones I grew up on. And
nice.
And so now I have one that's coming out, and actually, incidentally, it's with Andrews McMeel, which is the publisher who put out all those aforementioned books. So it's kind of a full circle moment. Yeah.
Congratulations! That's really awesome.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm really excited. It was really fun to work on, and I'm excited for people to see it. It's mostly new stuff. I know if you follow me on Instagram, I was really self-conscious about just printing out my Instagram and saying, buy this. But so the majority of it is stuff that I haven't put anywhere else. So yeah, I'm excited for it to be out in the world.
I was looking through some of like your sample cartoons on your website, and one of them does seem to be the cover image for This Is Me, which is, you guys, I laughed out loud. I will spoil the cover as I think it's the cover. Like when you just you back to your house, you walk into your apartment and you're like, well, this is me. It's that intonation, like it's that This Is Me, and it's like a man gesturing like one would at their apartment building, except it is an apartment building sized version of him. So it is quite literally, he is correct. It's him. And that was really funny to me.
Thank you. Yeah, I struggled to find a title for the book, and that one sort of rose to the top. And then as I started writing it, I realized that, well, let me just put it this way. If you want to take the pressure off yourself writing a book, don't call it This Is Me. It really puts it on a high tee.
That feels like a good tip.
This is a complete distillation of myself as a human being. But no, it's and in some sense, if we are what we create, I guess it is me. But yeah, it started as inspired by that cartoon.
Well, that sentiment feels like a perfect segue into the character that you've brought to discuss today and his whole comportment and persona. So who have you brought to the table today?
Okay, segue not intended, but I do agree because the character that I brought...
These things tend to emerge very organically. I'm always shocked at how frequently something a person says is like, you know what, this is the ideal bridge into making me turn this character into a referendum on your whole personality.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's a reason I picked him, so it makes sense. I chose the character of Charlie Kaufman in the movie Adaptation, written by Charlie Kaufman, 2002's Adaptation, which is a movie about Charlie Kaufman writing a movie which is an adaptation of the book The Orchid Thief.
So, tell me your thoughts on this crazy little project of ours. First, I think it's a great book.
LaRoche is a fun character, isn't he?
Absolutely. And Orlean makes orchids so fascinating. Plus her musings on Florida and orchid poaching, Indians. It's great, sprawling New Yorker stuff. And I'd want to remain true to that. You know, I'd want to let the movie exist rather than be artificially plot-driven.
Great. I guess I'm not exactly sure what that means.
Oh. I'm not sure I know what that means either. I just don't want to ruin it by making it a Hollywood thing, you know, like an orchid heist movie or something, you know, or changing the orchids into poppies and turning it into a movie about drug running, you know. Why can't there be a movie simply about flowers?
He's writing this, it seems like, as Being John Malkovich is in production, and he is on set for Being John Malkovich, and like seeing Catherine Keener, seeing John Cusack, they're like combing into the tiny set so they can be in the mind of Malkovich. It's layers upon layers upon layers.
Yeah, it's a meta. It's like the most meta piece of art I think I've consumed. And I think it's because Spike Jonze did both of them, I believe. So I think they actually literally shot, like they brought everyone back and shot it on the real set of that movie. And yeah.
Shut up. Okay? Let's really try today to solve our camera problems. Keep between take time at an absolute minimum. These masks are really hot, okay? I want to be very well heard on that from everybody. Don't futz unless it's absolutely important to the shot, okay? I don't say that for me. I say that for the people sitting here in 400 pounds of rubber. I like my dress. Okay?
Very good. So that, folks, you better heed that advice.
Yeah.
Okay?
When this came out, did you like it when you first saw it? I didn't. I couldn't greet it where it was at the time. But were you like, adaptation, man, this is paradigm shifting?
I don't think I knew what the word paradigm meant when it came out, but
Exactly.
I also don't think that I saw it when it came out because I saw Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind when I was in high school, and I feel like that was the first capital F film kind of. I'm sure I'd seen thoughtful cinema before that, but I feel like that was as I was sort of coming of age and starting to appreciate stuff that wasn't just. Dumb and Dumber and like Anchorman and that kind of stuff. It was sort of the first movie that really hit me in a different way, and Adaptation had come out before that. So I think my way to it was through Eternal Sunshine, which is also Charlie Kaufman, and then a couple of years later I found Adaptation. So I saw it and I did love it right away, but I was also probably a little bit older than if you saw it in theaters, you saw it. When you were younger than I was when I did. Is my long way of saying that.
When you started engaging with capital F film, were you like, yeah, this is for me? Like, I'm finding something that's really speaking to me? Or was it like, I don't know what's going on here, but like I'm willing to take a chance on it?
I think the process is gradual, and I'm sure I'm still in it. I don't think think it really finishes at any point. I just watched The Zone of Interest. Did you see that?
I have not yet seen it.
No, there's
Damn it.
no problem. It starts with a great deal of silence. It's a very slow plotting film. There's and I went into it blind too. Somehow I had avoided finding out what it was. And
wow.
Let me tell you, if there's a movie to go into blind, Zone of Interest is not
Holy
it.
shit! Yeah.
But as I was watching that, I felt like I was expanding my. One way to put it, I guess, would be my tolerance level for discomfort, because I feel like a lot of movies make you feel good and draw you in, and it's just fun, and then other movies challenge you, and it's not a comfortable experience. And I felt like Zone of Interest was very uncomfortable for me, and. I literally, as I was watching it, I felt that discomfort, and I thought, okay, this is something you want to tolerate and push through because it's worth it. And what I'm saying is, even now in my 30s, I'm still increasing my ability to watch things that aren't Transformers: Rise of the Beasts or whatever.
As a Michael Bay apologist, I will go on forever about the Transformers movies and their merits.
Well, I haven't seen that movie, so I was just trying to think of like a popcorn movie that came out recently.
I think that was a very well-placed example, honestly, having seen Rise of the Beasts and been left a bit unsatisfied.
Ugh.
But anyway.
What if I had picked the movie Rise of the Beasts because I saw myself in Robot Tiger?
I mean, the comedian Jackie Cation just picked a robot dog, the titular robot dog from the 2018 movie Axel. So we have been down that road recently, and I would have gone back with bells on.
Wow, I almost picked the movie Real Steel, the Hugh Jackman movie about punching robots. Have you seen that?
He was a G2. Built in early 2014, he was a sparring bot.
They must have built robots like this one that could mirror the fighting style of any other robot.
Okay, so can we get him a fight?
Are you not listening? He's a sparring bot, right? Built to take a lot of hits, but never dishing out any real punishment.
You'd always try to sell him off for parts.
Can't you get him a fight?
Oh, why can't you get him a fight? Get him a fight. God, you don't quit, do you? You want me to put him in some bottom rung scrap fest to the death? Come on, I saw how scared you were at Crash Palace. Yeah, the places that would let you fight this robot would make you pee your little pants.
Excellent. Get him a fight.
One of his best.
One of the best. It's such a good movie.
One of the best.
I couldn't. Yeah, I love father-son relationships in movies. I think the reason I couldn't pick it is because I'm not a father, and I sort of weirdly I saw myself in him, but I don't have a son. It was more like, ooh, a hypothetical version of myself where I have a son. I could see myself as Hugh Jackman.
I think Hugh's character in that movie might have argued that was a hypothetical version of himself that had a son because he wasn't exactly a willing father.
Wow. Okay, now I wish I'd picked. Can we pivot mid-episode to the movie Real Steel with Hugh Jackman where he plays a punching robot?
I would feel terrible because I haven't prepared for Real Steel.
Nor have I.
I was going to say, because I could do that right now. If you really were passionate about it, we could do that. But so the discomfort point is interesting to me because Charlie, in Adaptation, Nicolas Cage is Charlie. He is an extremely uncomfortable character. Like, he moves through the world with discomfort. He is uncomfortable with himself. He is uncomfortable with his work, though he's very good at it, and he is on an ascendantly successful path. When you watched him for the first time, did you experience him as uncomfortable, or did you experience him as relatable to yourself?
I think so I rewatched it for this episode. So I've seen it. I think I actually have seen it exactly 2 times. Once when I first saw it, and then again, 11 hours ago. And it did hit me in different ways each time. When I first saw it, I was young. I wasn't doing anything professionally. I was either in high school or just out. And what resonated with me then was just I was always a very anxious child, and I had extreme anxiety, but also OCD and just, neuroses.
What if I learned Russian or something? Or took up an instrument? I could speak Chinese. I would be the screenwriter who speaks Chinese and plays the oboe. That would be cool. I should get my hair cut short. Stop trying to fool myself and everyone else into thinking I have a full head of hair. How pathetic is that? Just be real, confident. Isn't that what women are attracted to? Men don't have to be attractive. But that's not true, especially these days. Almost as much pressure on men as there is on women these days. Why should I be made to feel I have to apologize for my existence? Maybe it's my brain chemistry. Maybe that's what's wrong with me. Bad chemistry. All my problems and anxiety can be reduced to a chemical imbalance or some kind of misfiring synapses. I need to get help for that. But I'll still be ugly, though. Nothing's gonna change that.
And it felt like one of the cleanest portrayals of that kind of brain that I had seen. And I was trying to think of other examples around that time, and I was like, man, I guess it was, what was the Jack Nicholson movie where he had OCD?
As Good as It Gets?
As Good as It Gets, right. And so it was like, As Good as It Gets, what's the Bill Murray movie where he has OCD too? What About Bob?
What about Bob? What about Bob?
So I feel like there were sort of these cartoonish portrayals of them, and also Jack Nicholson's character is also a total, he's like not a bad person. He's like a bigot, and
was gonna say you're harassing the like single mother down the hall from you. Like, wow, I don't get that vibe from
really
you, but like you're
resonated.
covering it well.
As an 11-year-old, I really just felt like, yes, finally, representation of a harassing older man.
Finally, a misanthrope I can connect with.
But I feel like Adaptation was one of the first movies, and I'm sure there have been many since, and I'm sure there were many before too that I just hadn't seen. But where it felt like he really captured what it's like to have an anxious brain that ruminates on everything, and it just felt cool to see that. And then so I think that was sort of the younger version of me. I think it really was as simple as that. And then the older version of me, now that I am a professional writer, obviously all of the additional layers of this being someone who's creating and struggling with what they want their product to be and wrestling with the push and pull of wanting to be original but also wanting to be successful and all of those things. So all that stuff started resonating with me this time. But obviously it didn't hit me when I was a young baby.
Well, that's I have so many feelings around a character because I feel like it sort of stems from and Woody Allen, like the sort of figure of the in one's head writer. I feel like him and his archetype went a long way to establishing this sort of image of the writer in media. And this is what you're like if you're a writer who makes film, who makes TV, if you want to be a writer, that you're anxious, that you're depressed, that you're insecure. And for a long time, I worked in journalism, as a staff member for 15 years. And I was always like, am I allowed to be here because I'm not depressed? I feel like there's a very effective propaganda demonstrated by movies because that's just sort of romantic, that's a romanticized figure. It's interesting to me how, like you said, I was an anxious kid. I had OCD. I struggled. These were things that you found challenges in. But I feel like cinema has gone a long way to making this a sort of lionized aspirational figure in terms of what you are if you're really a writer. Because you can't be Donald. You have to be Charlie. You can't be his twin brother Donald, who wants to write 90s thrillers. You have to be Charlie, who is the intellectual.
There are no rules, Donald. And anybody who says there are is just,
Not rules. Principles. McKee writes that a rule says you must do it this way. A principle says this works and has through all remembered time.
the script I'm starting, it's about flowers.
Oh.
Nobody's ever done a movie about flowers before. So there are no guidelines.
What about Flowers for Algernon?
Well, that's not about flowers.
Oh,
and it's not a movie.
Sorry, I never saw it. Okay, keep going.
Look, my point is that those teachers are dangerous if your goal is to try to do something new. And a writer should always have that goal. Writing is a journey into the unknown. It's not building, one of your model airplanes.
McKee is a former Fulbright scholar, Charles. Are you a former Fulbright scholar?
Yes, this sort of romantic, struggling writer. Yeah. No, you're so right. And that expands even beyond writing into sort of the comedy archetype in general, which is you have to be sort of this schlubby loser and really just kind of sad and mopey and all these things and
have just enough resentment about it.
Yeah,
but not so much that you drive us away.
Exactly. And I feel like there are comedy people I know who say things like, if you didn't have a hard childhood, how can you even be in comedy? And I do think that we're moving away from that being a necessary component of a comic persona, because I know people who I had a great childhood. I had, again, like I said, I had struggles, but I wasn't relentlessly bullied or striking out with romantic interests constantly.
I coasted. I pretty much coasted through adolescence and stuff. I had a great time. I loved high school.
See, there are people who would think that you can't really do comedy because you didn't have this sort of capital T traumatic experience. And I do. I bucket that, and I think culturally we're moving away from it too. I don't know. I say with no information, but it feels like
no. But I am, because and certainly comedy is something that I can't speak to at all. So that I am interested in your perspective of if that feels perhaps when you started getting into this job versus where you are now, or like watching the evolution of it, if that does feel like something that you feel like there is like a distancing from, if that's something you've actually noticed.
I mean, I think with comedy, it feels like you do have to have some sort of struggle in life to overcome, but also every single person in the world has struggle in life. Well, yeah, I think everyone does. I don't think that, I mean, even if like rich kids have struggles that they have to overcome too. And so I don't think that you have to. I think that anyone could do comedy, but I feel like there are people who would scream at me if they heard me say that.
I'm glad that you brought up too, like, you keep giving me these great segues. I'm really glad you brought up too, like, you know, like everybody has something. One of my favorite scenes in Adaptation is when, because like Donald, Charlie's twin brother, who looks just like, you know, got kind of receding hairline, who's, you know, dad bod kind of sort. And they're physically identical, but Donald has confidence, and he's got swagger, and he'll flirt with girls, and he's easy with the joke, and he's really sweet.
Hey, man. Please don't hit on crew members, Donald.
What, the makeup girl? She was hitting on me, bro.
Just don't embarrass me, okay? I have to work with these people. I won't. Anyway, listen. I meant to ask you, I need a cool way to kill people. Don't worry for my script. I don't write that kind of stuff. Come on, man, please. You're the genius.
And he's going to go take this writing class from a character played by Brian Cox.
Who's basically doing, this is like Logan, watching it now, I was like, oh, that's
Yes.
Logan Roy before Logan Roy. Like, he is truly just playing Logan Roy as, was it like Robert McKee or something?
Yeah, Robert, imagine Logan Roy is a screenwriter charging you a lot of money to get his guru screenwriting advice.
Yeah.
And Charlie initially thinks that this is bullshit. Like, he's just getting scammed. And Donald's like, oh, this was so illuminating. Like, he took so much value from it. But Charlie ends up in such writer's block that he goes and takes this McKee seminar. He pays the money to Brian Cox to get this screenwriting advice. And he asks Brian, he's like, what if you just want to write something where nothing happens, no one grows, there is no arc, and nothing goes on, just like real life? And Brian Cox lays into him and is like, nothing happens in real life? And goes on this amazing tirade about how people are born and die every day. They fall in love and their hearts break, like people betraying each other and helping each other.
Nothing happens in the world? Are you out of your fucking mind? People are murdered every day. There's genocide, war, corruption. Every fucking day, somewhere in the world, somebody sacrifices his life to save somebody else. Every fucking day, someone somewhere takes a conscious decision to destroy someone else. People find love. People lose it. For Christ's sake, a child watches a mother beaten to death on the steps of a church. Someone goes hungry. Somebody else betrays his best friend for a woman. If you can't find that stuff in life, then you, my friend, don't know crap about life. And why the fuck are you wasting my 2 precious hours with your movie? I don't have any use for it. I don't have any bloody use for it.
Okay, thanks.
And I was like, I feel so I'm ready to give Robert McKee my money right now because he's lining out this dork telling him that nothing happens in life because he seems just too sad to want to find it. Now, and I wanted to hear about your, like, the notion of, like, have you ever sort of fallen into the sort of Charlie trap of, like, well, you know, I would write about real life, but nothing's happening? Or, like, have you had more of a Donald approach to embracing the day?
I feel like there are 2 wolves within me, and they are Donald and Charlie, and they are fighting it all the time. I think I really do see the value in both approaches. I mean, I am someone who really responds to structure and formula, but I also identify with Charlie and his intense desire to be original. And I think the other thing I really relate to is, I guess, I mean, in a lot of ways, our outputs are determined by our inputs. And so if all you're doing is writing and creating, then all of a sudden, if that's your only input, then your output becomes content about the creation of content. And it can be sort of this self-referential I feel like he describes it as like solipsistic, narcissistic.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy to feel that way. And it's hard. I mean, like whoever gave the advice, write what you know, I don't think they anticipated a bunch of movies about making movies and a bunch of books about writers. And I do that too. I mean, I have, about 7,000 cartoons about writer's block. And of course, all of them are born from me struggling to come up with the idea for a cartoon. And then that struggle becomes the idea. So, but I also struggle with that. And I also think that I do think the risk is that you become obnoxious, and I hope I don't cross that line, but I'm also fully open to the possibility that I have and will and do.
It's time for a quick break, but Asher and I will be right back. Then I will have one quick thing at the end of the show about the new would-be blockbuster, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. I'm gonna let you guys know right now, I loved it, and so we're gonna talk a little bit about it at the end.
The Greatest Generation has been going for more than 8 years.
And if you've been Greatest Gen curious, but have never taken the leap, we recommend exploring your Greatest Gen curiosity in a safe, fun environment with partners you can trust. And right now is one of the best times ever to become a new listener.
That's because we just started covering a new series, Star Trek Enterprise, one of the horniest and weirdest editions of Star Trek ever released.
This is your chance to ease into the Greatest Generation lifestyle.
The Greatest Generation, now covering Star Trek Enterprise, the one with Scott Bakula, every Monday on MaximumFun.org or in your podcast app.
Hey, Sydney, you're a physician and the co-host of Sawbones, a marital tour of misguided medicine, right?
That's true, Justin.
Is it true that our medical history podcast is just as good as a visit to your primary care physician?
No, Justin, that is absolutely not true. However, our podcast is funny and interesting and a great way to learn about the medical misdeeds of the past, as well as some current, not-so-legit healthcare fads.
So you're saying that by listening to our podcast, people will feel better?
Sure.
And isn't that the same reason that you go to the doctor?
Well, you could say that, but...
And our podcast is free?
Yes, it is free.
You heard it here first, folks. Sawbones, marital tour of misguided medicine right here on Maximum Fun, just as good as going to the doctor.
No. Still not just as good as going to the doctor, but pretty good.
It's up there.
Something that always, I tried to keep front of mind when I was working on staff at publications was, I always got nervous that I would stop writing for readers and that I would start writing for other writers. Because there can just, when you're within, a sort of hive of writers and when you're within a sort of bubble, the sort of community that is, New York City media. I've always been based in LA, but, that was, my cohort. And I wanted to hear from you about, working in a writer's room for, a late night show and sort of working in the comedy sphere where I would imagine it's a very small world of people. Is that a consideration that you have? Writing for am I writing for the writers or am I writing for the people watching? Or is that anything that's ever been in your head? Because it feels like between Donald and Charlie, that's what those two wolves are doing as well. Donald's writing for, the people in the back, and Charlie seems to be kind of have the problem get stuck of kind of largely writing for himself and gets kind of hung up.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is a struggle that exists in every sort of subcategory of this career that I've had. I've wrestled with it. I mean, I came up in sketch and improv at the Second City in Chicago, and that's I don't know if you've ever been to the Second City, but it's kind of it's a tourist destination largely. If you go there on any given night, maybe, I don't know, 90% of the people there are from out of town and not comedy people and not writers or actors. I mean, just people who want to have a good time. And the process of writing a show on stage there is you test out material in front of the audience every night after the current show. And then as things begin to work, you fold that into the new show, and once you folded in enough new material, then it becomes the new show. So that's sort of the process. And,
oh, wow, okay.
And while you're testing things out, it's sort of, you can really get in your head when you think, okay, so these are the people who I'm testing this on are people whose opinions might vary wildly and differ from other people within the comedy community. And so you sort of are like, well, I want to write things that other comedians respect, but I also want to write something that this audience is going to laugh at. It has to be something this audience laughs at. And it's kind of a delicate balance. And this isn't to say people in the audience have bad taste. I mean, they don't. They have good taste. But it's or they can have good taste. And you know, if you only listen to them, then I remember there was like one in every 3 scenes you could do a joke about how at the time the Cubs were really bad, and you could just be like, this is as bad as the Cubs, and then the audience would just explode. And you sort of knew that. You sort of had that magic trick in your back pocket, but you're like, well, but no one in the comedy world is going to respect me if I only do the Cubs, like the Cubs are bad jokes. So you sort of had to find a balance.
No, that reminds me of something that we talked about on the episode with Jackie Cation as well, where we talked about the delineation between people funny and comedy funny.
Yeah.
And how it's not the same thing.
It's not. And some people find a way. I feel like early Steve Martin found a way to sort of take anti-comedy and make it mainstream. And I'm sure there are people who are doing it now. But there is kind of a bright line between the two that I think people in general really struggle to appeal to both audiences at once. And I don't have the answer. I think what I've found for myself is just I have to write things that I'm personally proud of. I remember when I first started getting into humor writing, this is before cartooning even, I became obsessed with getting accepted by McSweeney's, the online humor.
Right, yeah.
And so I think I submitted maybe 3 or 4 things that I really liked, and they were all rejected. And I thought, oh man, this sucks. I just really want to get in. And I kind of let that desire get the best of me, and I wrote something that I wasn't proud of. That was truly, I mean, it was like ChatGPT style, just like content generate. If you were to say like write a McSweeney's article, it's something that ChatGPT would. I think it was like GPS driving instructions by your favorite authors. So it's like Shakespeare was really flowery, and then Hemingway was just very blunt, and it was just kind of this sort of plug and play formulaic thing. And so I submitted it, and that also didn't get in. And first of all, I look back once in a while and I just thank my lucky stars that it didn't get in, because I would be so embarrassed if that was part of my permanent record. But I also, that rejection felt so much worse than the previous ones, because here I had sold out in a sense, because I was creating something only for what I thought was what the audience wanted. And then they didn't even take that. So I was like, oh, wait, now I'm not me and I'm being rejected? Like, at least before it was like they didn't like what I was doing. Yeah. So I think I kind of learned my lesson from that. And I try to just make stuff that I like and I'll stand by at least.
I think that's what works about what I love so much about Donald is I love the Donald counterpart to Charlie. I think that was so... I love that Charlie Kaufman chose to do that, to put his other wolf in on the screen in that way, because Charlie works because Charlie's so sincere. They're both so sincere, but Donald in his just like, I'm going to make the most rote, like pull all the devices out from the like suspense bag of tricks, like for his, his script, what is it, like The Three, and it's about like a therapist who becomes, or like a police officer who becomes obsessed with a woman who's like the victim of a crime, and he has to find her, and guess what, the twist is that he is the woman. So it's Dressed to Kill, but he's so, when he talks through his ideas, his eyes are just so wide, and he's so happy, and he's like, Mom called it psychologically taut, when Charlie's like dragging him over the coals for it. And so it's fascinating seeing how sincerity serves both of these men. And Charlie's sincerity seems to like kind of break him down and be something he has to fight with. And it seems to protect Donald. And just to see that like with the mirror of the twins, like within this like overlapping over itself story and adaptation is such a nice little device in there.
Yeah, because I like that too. And I'm glad that Donald was a character who was sincerely enthusiastic about those ideas. He wasn't Charlie deciding to do something that he knew was bad. He really actually thought it was good, and he would be excited for that movie. And who knows? I mean, maybe that basically was the movie Identity with John Cusack, right? Didn't Identity with John Cusack basically, isn't that like inspired by or directly or indirectly by the three? Because it's like the character is the killer, the cop, and the victim. And that's I mean, spoiler alert, that's the movie identity.
Okay, there's a serial killer, right? Well, no, wait. And he's being hunted by a cop, and he's taunting the cop, right? Sending clues who his next victim is. He's already holding her hostage in his creepy basement. So the cop gets obsessed with figuring out her identity, and in the process, falls in love with her, even though he's never even met her. She becomes like the unattainable, like the Holy Grail. It's a little obvious, don't you think? Okay, but here's the twist. We find out that the killer really suffers from multiple personality disorder, right? See, he's actually really the cop and the girl. All of them are him. Isn't that fucked up?
Yeah, I think both of them were succeeding because they were both doing the thing that they want to do. Yeah. I think the thing that I am envious of with Donald is that he didn't seem to think. I guess he didn't really ruminate on anything. He considered things and he made choices, but he didn't really second guess himself. And I think that's something I guess I wish I could do more. And because Charlie, even after he's made a decision, and I feel like one of the things I really related to the second time watching it was the emotional yo-yo of thinking he'd cracked it and having this kind of euphoric aha moment where he takes his tape recorder and he's recording what he thinks is going to be the idea, and then realizing it's bad, and just how his mood is just riding the roller coaster of his ideas, and that's something that I definitely do and wish I did not do.
Do you find that, like you said, you've watched this movie kind of twice, like the first time you saw it and then 12 hours ago at this point, did you find that, like, were there sort of bits of respite in watching it at this point, being like, I remember when this was more raw for me, and I've gotten certain things under control a bit for myself so I can, like, marshal the resources of my personality in ways that they can serve me as opposed to something that I might have to slog through a bit. So when you're, like, obviously we're all just works in progress constantly, but when you watch this, was it like, okay, I'm glad I've come a distance since the first time I connected with Charlie, or did he still feel as raw to you as he did the first time?
Okay, I agree with you that we're all works in progress, and I think that it sort of depends day to day. I mean, I do remember when I was first doing improv, for example. I feel like an improv teacher told me this early on. She said that when you first start out, your mood basically drops and rises with the most recent show you did, and as you get older and you've done more shows, it becomes sort of this more gradual, like the wave. The waveform just becomes it's like a narrower. So like your highs are less high, your lows are less low, and you just kind of even out. And I definitely had that experience with improv, but I do think that that's something I've had with everything. Like when you first start doing something. Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember when I first got accepted by The New Yorker, it was one of the best feelings I've ever had, maybe in my entire life. But then the next week or something, or whenever I got rejected next, that obviously hurt so much more. And then as I now,
isn't it crazy when you have a win and then it's like, oh, I only win, like certain wins where it's like, I'm only winning now, like I unlocked it, and then you realize that you can in fact still lose, and it's like, oh, Jesus Christ. I just got Hulk slammed back down into the earth.
And it's funny because 100% of people warn you that happens. Like you'll watch an interview with like Brad Pitt or something, and he'll be like, yeah, it's like it's all rejection, even after success, like it's still mostly rejection. You're like, okay, whatever. And then it happens to you and you're like, oh my God, it really is. Like somehow it doesn't sink in until it's happening to you.
So, hey, listeners, just always something to look forward to out there. Always a character-building exercise on the horizon.
It really feels like those studies about lottery winners where they feel really good for something like 72 hours or something, and then after that, no matter what amount of money they've won, their happiness level return. Or, on the other side, if you get hit by a car and it's a real wake-up call, and you're like, I'm going to appreciate every moment. And then again, like 72 hours later, you're just doing the exact, living the life you were living before. Just nothing lasts.
This is why John Kramer organized elaborate torture traps in the Saw franchise to get people to truly appreciate their lives with lasting lessons. Because he clearly understood the fleeting feeling of clarity and was like, no. I will give you something to remember this by.
Is that...
So thanks, John.
Is that Jigsaw's...
That's the premise of Saw.
Wow. All I know is...
Of the entire franchise.
So when he says... Like you want to play a little game. Like, that's the game? Yeah. Wow. The game is always, appreciate your life.
Everybody in a Saw trap has gone astray in their life. And if they truly desire to keep living it and get on a better path, then they will have the gumption to do something like cut a key out of the body laying next to them in a dank room so they can unlock the trap mechanism wrapped around their head that is about to crush their skull. But, only to do something like once they start cutting and to find the key, they realize that person's alive, they're going to have to kill them to get out kind of thing.
Wow.
So
okay.
They're all every Saw is a morality tale about people who need to appreciate their life more.
All right. Well, I hope that happens to me tomorrow. I need to appreciate everything more.
Yeah, I hope you don't have to wake up and saw your own leg off before you're decapitated. I hope that you don't end up with that choice.
I might need it. I need it.
Yeah, I might need it. Well, you're a successful person. You got published in the New Yorker. You got a book coming out. You book coming out from those people who used to publish the cartoon books that you read when you were growing up. You write for the Colbert Show. What is when you got into the writing business, were you more Charlie-minded or were you more Donald-minded? Like, obviously, you don't have to be the polarity. You can be a hybrid of both. But, like, what was the stuff that kind of spoke to your heart where you were like, you know what? The script that I've got sitting in the spec that I've got sitting in my portfolio that I'm just really going to fucking dust off one day. Like, which direction does that hew towards?
I feel like I think I was probably more Charlie-minded. I think.
Okay. And I don't say that with any predisposition because I'm Donald.
You're Donald all the way?
Yeah. If I could make 10 DTV action movies a year, I would.
That would be well. See, now I think the older I get, the more I think, like, let's just have fun. Like, if I would totally just write something just for fun. I think when I was younger and I was starting out, it was more important to me to really like crack this and create something unlike anything that's ever been made, et cetera, et cetera. And I do think that as I've gotten, I still want to make cool stuff, but I think fun is a bigger part of that calculus than it was initially, which is ironic given that I went into comedy. But I think fun has become like the primary driver.
Now, what is it for you? Like, because obviously this is like an enterprise question. It's like fucking meaning of the universe sort of situation. But for you personally, what was that desire to make like the unseen thing? Like, what was like the what attached to the yearn for that of like, but what if I made something that's like the most original thing anyone's ever seen? Like, what's that motivator?
I don't know what it is. I mean, honestly, I really don't. I think when I remember when people, I remember when I first started out and a producer asked me, I think it was a producer at the Second City, and I hadn't gotten cast, and she said, what we really would love to see in your next audition or over the next year is we want to better understand your point of view. What do you think? And I remember in that moment thinking, what do I think? I just want to be successful at this. Like, that's what I want.
Yeah,
I don't have a point of view beyond that. And then I think as I've gotten older, now I understand more. Like, you have to believe. You can't just want to be successful. Like, that's not how it works. You have to want to be able to say something or do something.
What did you find was your point of view? What is your current point of view? Is it wildly different from when she told you that?
I think I'm probably just more able to access it. And also, I mean, something like 90% of the brain is, like, brain activity is subconscious, and I'm sure I don't have full access to it at any given moment. But I mean,
it's appropriate that I would just be like, access this here and now. Get into that unaccessible 90%. Inaccessible.
I mean, I think a huge unlock for me was when I started doing, I moved to New York to write on a show called The Opposition, which was a late night show hosted by Jordan Klepper, and it was a spinoff of The Daily Show, and it was very...
I remember that.
It was very directly... thank you for remembering it. It was only on the air for 9 months, I think. But it was doing political satire at The Opposition. I think that was the first time I was forced to really be in touch with my own perspective on things, because we were covering political issues, and I mean, I've always been a news junkie and politically minded, but I hadn't really I hadn't really commingled that with my comedy. And so, and actually the exercise at that show, we literally, when you pitch something, the structure was news story headline, what your earnest take is, so just how you feel about it, and then your satirical take. How do you want the show to attack it in a satirical way? The joke became that it was always like, headline, earnest take, it's good. The satirical take, it's bad. You know, just the opposite. But I think that was the first time I really started to try to understand my personal take on things. And I hope it's only grown since then.
To begin, how to start. I'm hungry. I should get coffee. Coffee would help me think. But I should write something first, then reward myself with coffee. Coffee and a muffin. Okay, so I need to establish the themes. Maybe banana nut. That's a good muffin.
I was gonna say, like, can you feel in, like, because it becomes muscle memory at a certain point. Like, when you understand, like, a formula, you can understand how to play with the formula sort of situation. So do you find that, like, does one have to, when they get so in the routine of something, like, again, like, late night feels like you're there every night. Like, this is high volume delivery from a comedy level. Do you have to sort of force yourself at all to stay out of the sort of girders of the routine in order to keep pushing yourself? Or do you guys push each other enough sufficiently to make sure that, like, routine doesn't keep you sort of in too much of a groove?
I mean, I am firmly a creature of habit. I mean, with my cartooning practice, I literally wake up every single morning, do 30 minutes of brainstorming, and draw the things that come from that, and then finalize them later that night. And I think one thing I've found over the course of my career is that I sort of have to have a routine, or else I don't do anything, because I can get stuck in this relates back to adaptation, but I can get stuck in this ruminating cycle of trying to find the perfect answer to this question, when a lot of times there is no perfect answer. You just have to land on an answer. And so, I think writing for me in general is relying less on inspiration and more on just routine, deadline, must hit send at this time, and that's kind of how I survive. I mean, sounds like a pretty good situation. You got a little routine in place, and you get rewarded for adhering to that routine. Yeah. No, it's good. It's good. Are you a long form individual? Do you have, like, screenplays in your back pocket? Oh yes, I do. I have all the things. I was actually reflecting on this the other day, because I think someone said, like, do you want, because I mostly write and draw, and I perform live on stage, but I don't do a lot of on camera work now because just my schedule doesn't allow it. And someone recently asked me if I wanted, they were like, do you still have the acting bug? Do you want to get back on camera? And I was like, of course I do. I want to do all the things. And, like, that's the hard part, is you can only do, like, 1.5 things at a time. So
right. If you don't want to, like, fuck them up, like, if you don't want to be spread too thin, like, you need to, like, focus. Yeah. And that's what, man, when I first started, I feel like I thought there was a part of me that thought you could sort of do it all. And some people feel like they are, like, the actor, writer, director, producer, all these things. But it does sort of, the older you get, it does sort of feel like you probably do, like, 4 things in your life, really. I mean, like, you can, there's exceptions and, like, cases on the margins, but it does. I'm kind of glad I didn't realize that early on, because that feels like it puts way too much pressure on every individual decision. If you're like, do you want this to be 25% of your career? Like, if someone had told me before I started cartooning, like, do you want this to be the thing that you do? And I was like, well, no, I mean, I just want to do it. And now it has ended up becoming one of the primary things I do. But, and it's good. I like it. I'm glad it is. But I think that I would have been paralyzed if it had been phrased that way. And I think the same thing can happen in all forms of writing. If you told someone, hey, you're going to spend 7 years getting this movie made, do you love it enough to do that? A lot of people would be like, no, I don't. I mean, it's fine, but I don't. It's not like
I don't want to spend a fifth of my adult life on it.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, Asher. We really appreciate you taking the time, and we appreciate the chance to get back into Adaptation, such a rich text with somebody.
I love it. Thank you for having me. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the podcast, so it's it's an honor to be on this side of it. Thanks so much.
Thank you again to Asher Perlman. His book of cartoons called Well, This Is Me comes out on June 18th. If you're in the New York City area, there is a book launch party on June 21st at Littlefield in Brooklyn. And you can pre-order that book now, and we will put a link in the show notes to make it super easy for you. And now that one quick thing before I go, support independent cinema, as always. And is there more of a maverick mind out there operating at a blockbuster scale than the George Miller? Furiosa came out over the Memorial Day weekend. It did not have an overwhelmingly boffo debut. But you know what? This is a Mad Max movie. This is a modern day George Miller Mad Max movie. Fury Road, I think, for those out there, so many of us out there, really just kind of scrambled our brains into what was, in considering what was possible in the theater of action. The man dared do things with like a feature-length car chase I don't think we ever even conceptualized we might see. And so therefore created, one of the rarest things in cinema, which is something that I think truly, truly surprises you in a way that you kind of never forget what it felt like the first time you saw it. Such a wow. An Academy Award-winning wow, thank God, that got recognized at an institutional level. And, there's, I'm sure plenty of people out there who are like, I don't need this IP to be stretched to death. I don't need an origin story for Furiosa. We don't need to come out here and just drain the well dry. But, Fury Road was already the fourth Mad Max movie, guys. We're already deep in this franchise. George Miller has already gone back and forth to the well a number of times, so him doing it for a fifth shouldn't necessarily offend your constitution as, I don't know, maybe some kind of Ozploitation purist. Hey, like it or not, I give it a chance. For some reason, it doesn't seem like a movie a lot of people are giving a chance, despite the fact that it is fucking cool. Bottom line, it's a super cool movie that I think if you were ever going to watch it and you're somebody who goes to theaters, go see it in a theater because it's an event. It is a big screen event. I love me some Anya Taylor-Joy, and the casting in this of her as a little girl, and then as herself, the maturing Furiosa, I think she does a great job with it. And the thing that I was actually looking forward to most about Furiosa, I got in spades, which was Chris Hemsworth getting to go full Ozploitation. The man is an Australian. Let him play a madman in a dyed-in-the-wool, homegrown Australian adventure action movie. He is fantastic. He's chewing it up on screen every bit along the way. It's a world I was so happy to go back to. And listen, hey, consider the source. My favorite of the original Mad Max trio? Thunderdome. Okay, who's surprised that listens to Feeling Seen to hear that? You shouldn't be. Give me Tina Turner in the wasteland of the post-Water Wars apocalypse. Yes. So put the hat on the hat. Make it a little extra. Give me more mustard on my Mad Max. Go see Furiosa, you guys. If you got A-list, you should. Just check that box. Turn out. If you want to go see something that truly deserves to be seen big and wide and tall and loud, this is that. This is that. And it's still, how can a movie be so big and feel so cozy and charming at the same time? How could a movie be a part of a franchise and feel so wonderfully original and on its own? George Miller does it unlike anyone else does. And the man also made Happy Feet, so he's a man of texture. But yeah, that's just I feel weird stumping for Furiosa like it's a little Sundance movie that could. But that's kind of how I feel about it right now. It warmed my heart. I think it's my favorite of the Mad Max movies. I kind of feel similar to it the way I did about Terminator Dark Fate, which is like, look, I get that it's not objectively the best of the franchise that it is part of, but it's like the one that feels like it's for me. And Furiosa feels like the Mad Max that was made for me. And I'm very grateful to have it. So that's it. That's our show. A nice little lovely note about Furiosa from me to you. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at FeelingScenePod or send us an email at feelingscene@MaximumFun.org. If you want to follow me, I'm Jor Crew on Twitter, JORCRU. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. This show is produced by Marissa Flaxbart. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher, and this is a production of Maximum Fun.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows,
supported directly by you.